My lords, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, friends, era un grande prazer estar aqui com vocês. First, I want to say to Rubens, thank you, Rubens, for your all too generous comments about my achievement. It is we that stand in awe of you for everything that you have achieved, truly remarkable in your lifetime so far, and heaven knows what you're going to do from here on in. But I would tell you one thing. I'm delighted to hear that our good friend, Fabio Barbosa, squeezed out your last penny. That was very reassuring. He went on a mission and he delivered the goods. I'm sure Fabio would be delighted to know he has so many friends in this hall tonight. I would like to thank the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce. It is a real honour and privilege to receive this year's UK Personality of the Year award from you. I feel a great sense of pride, as you've seen in the film, in what BG Group has achieved. We went on a journey from being a minor E&P division of the old British Gas into an internationally diversified integrated oil and gas company with a particular specialism in gas and in LNG. The strategy presentation earlier today from Chris Finlayson, my successor as CEO, shows that this journey is far from over. The portfolio is rich with opportunities to carry BG Group forward into its third decade and indeed beyond. Tonight, though, it's fitting, I think, to focus on Brazil and our partnership in particular with Petrobras, which is going from strength to strength. And firstly, if I may, I'd like to rewind memories back to the 1990s, a period of significant change in South America when we witnessed, for example, the liberalization of Argentina and of Bolivia. But none of these events generated the scale and extent of the opportunities about to unfold with the liberalization of Brazil. And I can remember at the time that everyone in the game believed that the opportunities would be exciting, but just how exciting, I think, couldn't be envisaged or even imagined at that time. The first deep water offshore bidding round came about in Brazil in 1999, and we threw our hat into the ring, but disappointingly lost out to more aggressive bids. So the following year, determined to win, we went in earnest for the second round, and we agreed to bid a certain work programme, and our head of exploration, Malcolm Brown, who's in the room here somewhere, flew into Rio. Now, the night before the bid, he heard these very disturbing rumours that other companies were set to go in very high indeed. And I was at a conference, I believe, in Nice at the time, and he rang me, telling me all about this concern he had. So we made some calculations then and there on the telephone, and after a few deep breaths, decided to increase significantly the amount we were to bid. The bidding day arrived and we bid very substantial programs of work, and this time were much more successful than the year before, winning both of the first two blocks that we bid on. Now, it was just at this very late stage that Petrobras said to us, do you want to go in for a third block? You know, this was being bid on the same day. We decided we would go for it, but that we'd only bid a very small work programme because we'd already won the two blocks that we had targeted. Not only did we end up winning the third block, because actually nobody else bid on that block, but remarkably, it later transpired that this block contained the first of our supergiant discoveries, the Lula field. Now, at this point, I should mention in response to the Brazilian ambassador's comments earlier, and I'm told that I am allowed to disclose this, that we bid in this latest round on 12 blocks, and I'm delighted to say that we won 10 of them. And so therefore, we will be looking forward to not only a very long future from the assets we already own in Brazil, but we look forward to having more success in these new blocks, new territories, new geographies that we have just today acquired. So if nothing else, all of this demonstrates or is an example of the benefits of short lines of communication and the ability to adjust strategy in real time. But of course, if I look back there, and at that stage we didn't know anything about the significance of the block we'd won, this third block that we bid hardly anything for. The focus over the next years for Petrobras and ourselves was to acquire seismic data, and we shot at that time one of the largest, I think the largest, seismic program ever shot in the world. By 2005, we were ready to spud our first well at Parachi in Block BMS-10, and it was, just at that point that we had some bad news. It was probably about the only bad news that we ever received in our Brazilian drilling campaign, which was that the shallower post-salt, as we call it, prospects were dry. They contained no hydrocarbons. And this was a real blow, as our original bid had been premised on the fact that we would discover resources there, and that we felt that the pre-salt, which was some 2 kilometres further below the surface, would be uneconomic at the oil prices that were prevailing at that time, and given the extreme water depths that we were in which we were operating. So regardless of this bad news right at the outset, we persevered into the pre-salt and completed, in fact, the deepest well ever drilled in Brazil, 7,600 metres, right to the base of the sedimentary basin. I have to tell you, this went on for an agonising 22 months. If drilling rig rates had been the same as they are today, it would have cost $1.2 billion to drill that well. Fortunately, they were a tenth of the rates that they are today, so it was much cheaper at that time. Now, while we did discover some light crude and gas at the base of this section, this well, what we didn't realise at the time was that we had drilled through a carbonate section higher up in the sequence that would prove to be so incredibly prolific elsewhere in the basin. That was just something that we had to come to discover a little later. The next well was Chupi, which was an oil discovery, but still we had massive uncertainties about the quality of the reservoir and whether this find would be economic. So we just kept on moving forward. The third well was Chupi Sul in what we now know as the Lula field, and this was the first of many, many eureka moments as we began really to understand the sheer potential and scale of what we were looking at in terms of reservoirs. Real momentum grew from this point as we went on to drill successes at Carioca, followed by Guará, now known as Sapinhoá, where we found a truly prolific world-class reservoirs. At this stage, I can tell you, the atmosphere in our office was quite electric with excitement as we began to comprehend the sheer scale of what lay before us. Our 5 big discoveries in the Santos Basin are today believed to contain some 6 billion barrels of resources net to BG Group, with an upside of some 8 billion barrels. I would add that Petrobras, of course, have got much more. But the juxtaposed Lula and Iracema fields cover an incredible expanse of some 1,200 square kilometres. Some of the wells are capable of producing up to 50,000 barrels oil equivalent per day from reservoirs between 5 and 6 kilometres below the surface, and in some approaching, I would say, 2.5 kilometres of water depth, way out there, 250 kilometres offshore in the deep continental shelf. These finds will produce for many decades and will be truly transformational for BG Group, Petrobras, our other partners, and indeed for the entire Brazilian economy. This achievement is a success story without precedent since the discovery of oil in the North Sea. And last month, gross production from the partnership's first 2 floating production units had already increased to around 140,000 barrels a day. We expect by 2018 to install some 2.6 million barrels a day of production capacity from 15 floating production units. As I mentioned, BG's partnership with Petrobras goes from strength to strength. And the relationship, I can honestly say to you, has flourished through mutual respect and trust. No relationship, of course, can exist without these 2 essential components. And through the deployment of some of our best professionals, geoscientists, drilling engineers, facilities and pipelines experts, and I would say some of the smartest commercial people in our industry, all of them focused on the common goals of maximising economic recovery of oil and gas and achieving very early on-stream dates. In fact, our first production, quite remarkably, came on stream just 4 years after we'd made the Lula discovery. And believe me, that is a truly remarkable feat in such deep water, for which our operator, Petrobras, deserves widespread industry applause. And for those in Petrobras listening, I truly am grateful for the enormous effort that you've made and for the great achievement which you have delivered on the development of these resources. Looking back through the evolution of this journey, there were a number of extraordinarily exciting moments as the scale of our discoveries became clearer. But you know, for me, perhaps the most exciting part of the journey in Brazil is that it's far from over, and that I expect many eureka moments remain for BG and our partners in the future. I, for one, am going to be very excited still to look on at the developments which will unfold over the next years and possibly decades to come. And I want to thank our partners for their contribution, and especially Petrobras for their exceptional operatorship. I also want to thank the Brazilian government and authorities for helping us make such rapid and sure-footed progress. Thank you very much for your attention.